next witness is Captain Phineas Maseta. This witness is going to testify in respect of Exhibit XL and Exhibit X12. Just want to check if the court has those exhibits.
It's X.
X in brackets 11 and X in brackets 12. I have a spare
So
copy.
it's 11 and 12.
Yes.
You have a spare copy. Can I have this? Yeah.
Spare copy of the court.
Yeah, because. So your full name, sir, can you say the witness in?
Okay. Language?
English, English, my lord.
English. Okay.
My full name is Mampsedi, that is M-M-A-M-P-S-H-E-D-I. Mampsedi. My surname is Masetla.
Okay.
And you have any objection in taking the prescribed oath?
No, my lord.
Do you swear that the evidence you have to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing else but the truth? Raise your right hand and say, so help me God.
So help me God.
The witness is sworn in.
Thank you.
Squad, please, my lord. We're first going to start with Exhibit X12, where the particulars of the witness appear. Captain, if I can ask you to turn to Exhibit 12, just put the contents on record.
Yes.
Just go ahead.
Mampsedi Phineas Masetla declares under oath in accordance with Section 212, subsections 4A, 6B, and 8A of the Criminal Procedure Act of 51 of 1977 as amended as follows. I, number 054297222, I'm a captain in the South African Police Service at the Biology Section of the Forensic Science Laboratory with the address as 730 Pretoria Street, Arcadia, and my email address is Masetla Phineas.
Yes, that's fine. You can continue after that, after the telephone number.
I'm a senior forensic analyst and a reporting officer, and I'm in service of the state.
Lana-ke imininingwane yakhe-ke Mr. Masitla chaza-ke ukuthi uyasho-ke phansi kwalama-section abhaliwe-ke lana awu-212 nenamba yakhe-ke yesiphoyisa ukapteni emaphoyiseni futhi-ke usebenza-ke kuyona-ke i-section ye-biology science laboratory ne-address yakhona-ke nokuthi forensic analyst, senior forensic analyst emaphoyiseni kuyona-ke leyo i-section ye-biology futhi sebenzela umbuso.
Yes, you can go ahead. Paragraph 2.1.
I'm in possession of a BSc degree majoring in physiology and zoology. I'm also in possession of a BSc honors degree in aquaculture majoring in genetics. These qualifications were obtained at the University of the North. Included as part of the above-mentioned courses is molecular and cellular biology, which is relevant to DNA. I was attached to the biology section of the Forensic Science Laboratory from March 2002 until May 2007. I then rejoined the biology section of the Forensic Science Laboratory in April 2013.
Just a minute. Yes. What happened between 2007 and 2013, after you've left the Forensic Science Laboratory?
I went and joined the Department of Agriculture as an assistant director and working as an agricultural food and quarantine technician.
Uma sengisukile-ke noma ngalesikhathi ngithi-ke ngasebenza from 2002 kwaze kwayoshaya u-2007 ila ngahamba khona-ke ngayosebenza kuyona-ke i-Department ye-Agriculture phezulu-ke ushilo ukuthi-ke imfundo ayiphothula iyona-ke i-BSc degree kwi-physiology kanye ne-zoology kanye futhi-ke nayo i-BSc honors degree kwi-aquaculture esebenza-ke ngawo ama-genetics kanye futhi kulezo yifunda-ke zaphothulwa zatholakala kuyona-ke i-University yase-North. Phakathi kwazo-ke kukhona abakubiza ngokuthi kusebenza ngayo i-molecular kanye ne-cellular i-biology, zona-ke ezimayela noma ey'phathelene nayo i-DNA noma-ke ulibofuzo. Ngisebenzile kuyona-ke i-section ye-biology yayo i-forensic science laboratory kusuka ngoMarch ka-2002 kwaze kwayoshaya-ke uMeyi ka-2007. Ngase ngibuyela futhi-ke noma ngabuyela futhi kuyona-ke i-section leyo ye-biology ne-forensic ngayo April ka-2013.
And your qualifications as mentioned in paragraph 2.1, when did you obtain them?
I obtained the BSc degree in 2000, the year 2000,
Eyokuqala-ke noma-ke i-BSc yona-ke i-degree ngayithola ngonyaka ka-2000
and the honors degree in the year 2001.
kwase kuthi yona-ke i-honors degree ngayithola ngo-2001.
Yes, you may proceed.
I've undergone in-house training within the Forensic Science Laboratory with reference to opening of parcels containing biological evidential material, the preliminary testing for body fluids thereof, and the DNA techniques which have offered knowledge and skills for forensic biological analysis.
Ngitholile-ke noma ngiye ngathola-ke uqeqesho lwangaphakathi-ke ngayo kuyona-ke i-forensic science laboratory ngokumayelana-ke nokuvulwa-ke kwamaphasela anobufakazi-ke be-biology kanye futhi-ke nokuthestwa-ke kwama-fluids omzimba kanye futhi-ke nama-technique noma iy'ndlela-ke zayo i-DNA noma-ke ulibofuzo ehambiselana-ke nalo-ke ulwazi kanye futhi-ke nekhono layo i-forensic biology noma ukuhlaziywa noma uku-analyzwa kwayo.
And when did you undergo that training?
The training, it started when I joined the Forensic Science Laboratory in 2002.
Yes. Leyo training leyo-ke iqale uma sengiqala-ke lana kwi-forensic science laboratory ngo-2002.
Yes.
And then it was a continuous training with up until 2006. Is then that by then I finished all the training at the Forensic Science Laboratory.
Bekuqeqesho-ke eluqhubekayo-ke kwaze kwaba kwashaya u-2006 ila engaqeda khona-ke ngawo wonke ama-trainings-ke ayo i-forensic science laboratory.
Yes. Paragraph 2.3.
I have approximately 25 years experience in the biological sciences.
Wona-ke lo msebenzi ophathelene nama-biologic neminyaka-ke ngathi ewu-25 isipiliyoni wenza.
Captain, can you just briefly explain what is DNA?
My lord, DNA is a scientific term which means deoxyribonucleic acid.
Ithemu-ke leyo ephathelene-ke noma-ke eyesayensi-ke iyona iminingi iyona le ayichazile
Ribonucleic acid.
ribonucleic acid. Kusho u-DNA umele lokho noma usho lokho.
DNA is found in the cells throughout the body.
Etholakala futhi-ke kumzimba wonke noma-ke kuma-cells kumzimba wonke.
So DNA is a building block that builds an individual.
Ikona-ke noma iyona-ke eyakha umuntu.
The DNA of an individual is the same throughout the body.
Futhi-ke eyomuntu iyafana umzimba wonke.
So the DNA from the blood, the DNA from the semen, the DNA from the hair root, or any part of an individual's body is the same.
Noma kukuyiphi ingxenye yomzimba wakho angeke yahluke iyafana.
So that's why we are able to use DNA, because we know that the DNA of an individual is the same. If a person or in terms of crime, in terms of rape. If a person raped a female, we are able to use the DNA that from the semen that was taken from the female and the DNA that was taken from the suspect. It can be buccal, it can be blood, and we are able to compare those two DNAs from different parts of the body, different fluids, because we know that if they are coming from the same individual, they will then be the same.
Ingakho ke uma uthola ke uzothola la kunobulele sikhona ke kumacala ke okudlula noma ke awe rape siyakwazi ukuthi siqhathanise lokho esikutholile nama DNA etholakele kowesifazane nakulowo owumsolwa ke ususpect ukuthi ke noma kukuyiphi ipart yomzimba sihlanganiseke noma siqhathanise sitholeke imiphumela ngoba siyazi ukuthi noma yiphi ipart yomzimba wakho kodwa yona iDNA angeke ihluke.
And how does an individual get DNA?
An individual gets his or her DNA from both parents.
Uyithola ke iDNA kubazali bakho bobabili.
Half of your DNA will be from the mother, and then the other half will then be from the father.
Ngxenye kuzoba yikama enye ingxenye bese kuba yikababa.
And how is that expressed in scientific terms?
So you always hear that we have 46 chromosomes, and half of those chromosomes will be from the mother, and then the other half will then be from the father.
Sihlala sizwa ke ukuthi ke kunaloko kubizwa ngokuthi ke ama chromosomes ukuthi umuntu unama awu 46. Ingxenye ke yaleyo 46 ekababa bese ukuthi ingxenye kube ekama.
So in other words, 23 chromosomes will be
From the mother, and then the other will then be from the father.
Kusho ukuthi ke u23 ekama bese ukuthi ke onye ke kube ekababa.
And what do your duties entail at the biology section of the Forensic Science Laboratory?
I'm a senior forensic analyst and a reporting officer.
Yes.
Umsebenzi wami ke ukuthi ngi-analyst ke noma i-senior forensic analyst kanye futhi ke ne-reporting officer.
Yes. What does that entail?
Basically, I'm responsible for analyzing the DNA results.
Okwami ke ukuthi ke bese ngihlola ke imiphumela ye-DNA
In terms of doing the interpretation of the DNA results,
ukuthi ke ngichazeke ukuthi ke imiphumela leyo isho ukuthini.
so where I will then do what we call a DNA comparison.
Ila engizothi ngenze khona ke ukuqhathaniswa kwalo kulibofuzo.
So I will then have, in a case like this one, I will have the DNA from the exhibits.
Uma sikhuluma ngaleli ke icala ngizoba nayo ke banalo libofuzo ubufakazi noma ingxenye zobufakazi ama exhibit
From the scene,
la indawo yesigameko,
and then they also have the DNA results from the reference samples.
kanye futhi ke nama result noma imiphumela ke yama sample.
Can you just explain what is a reference sample?
The reference samples are the samples that are taken from the suspect or the accused individual. So those are reference sample when I'm talking about specifically for this case. But a reference sample can be a sample of a known individual. So if they take a sample from a known individual, we can use it as a reference sample.
Masikhuluma ngawo ke ama reference sample kuleli ke icala sizokhuluma ke ngaloko okuthathwe kubona ke asithi ke abamangalela noma ke abasolwa ke kodwa uma kuukuthi ke kudonswe noma kuthathwe kumuntu owaziwayo ke naleyo ke izotholakala nayo ke izosetshenziswa.
Can you explain the process when a sample is sent to the biology section at the Forensic Science Laboratory? What is the process that is followed?
So, my lord, the process is that an investigating officer will come to the lab to bring the exhibits. They can either be the exhibits from the scene or the reference samples.
Okwenzekayo ke noma kwenzeka kanjani ukuthi ke ama sample nobufakazi bulethwe ke lab ukuthi ke loyo ke ophenya icala uzoletha-ke ubufakazi lobo-ke okutholakale-ke kwisini leyo noma-ke loko okutholakale asithi-ke umuntu.
So we have a dedicated staff at the Forensic Science Laboratory who are working at the reception, who will then receive those particular exhibits, taking into consideration our standard operating procedures in terms of looking whether the exhibits are sealed, whether is there the correspondence or the covering minutes correspond with what is written on the exhibit. So those are the checks that we do before we can receive those particular exhibits.
Sinabantu-ke abasebenza khona-ke la ekungenwa khona-ke i-area lena ebizwa ukuthi kuse-reception. Bona-ke abazobheka-ke noma bazokwenza isiqiniseko-ke sokuthi uma khona lokhu okubhalwe phansi-ke incwadi noma kuthiwa i-covering letter iyahambelana yini, iyakusho lokhu okubonakalayo laphayana, futhi-ke nokuthi ama-exhibits lawo avaliwe noma cha.
So when in that case everything is okay, all the requirements are met, we will then receive that particular exhibit, and the docket, like this file, will then be opened and then given a specific lab number.
Kuzothi-ke uma sithola ukuthi konke-ke kukahle-ke ila khona-ke lawo ma-exhibits azokwamukelwa-ke bese-ke i-file efana nalena-ke ezovula inikezwe-ke inamba yaselab.
So that will take place at the reception, and then thereafter the exhibits they will then be given to an analyst who will do what we call a preliminary analysis.
Konke-ke lokho kwenziwa-ke kuleya area-ke yase-reception bese kuthi kuzodluliselwa-ke kwi-analyst yena-ke ozokwenza-ke ukuthi-ke aqale-ke ukuthi enze-ke umsebenzi noma-ke enze ama-analysis kubizwa ukuthi i-preliminary.
Can you explain what is preliminary analysis?
Yes, my lord, what then happened is the analyst who's doing preliminary analysis will get an empty docket and a bag, for instance, with a head inside. So what he will then do, he will then take that particular bag, cut out the seals, and paste them in the docket, and thereafter remove the head.
Okuzokwenzeka-ke lana ukuthi uma eqala-ke uzothola-ke asithi mhlampe-ke noma-ke ifile njena-ke empty-ke kanye futhi-ke nesikhwama-ke asithi leso sikhwama leso sinesigqoko ngaphakathi-ke usezobe asika-ke lawo asil lawo-ke awabeke-ke noma awaplace kulona-ke idokoti lelo.
So basically, in that stage, we are compiling a docket.
Kuleso stage-ke ila esihlanganisa khona-ke idokodo.
So when after opening that particular exhibit, the exhibit will then be tested for preliminary whether the exhibit has blood on it, in this case, and then we are using what we call a preliminary analysis. That's where you are testing for blood.
Lana-ke noma-ke kuleyo leso sigaba-ke ila ekubhekwa khona-ke ukuthi leyo exhibit leyo ukuthi mhlampe-ke inegazi yini.
And how do you test for the presence of blood?
So we have a chemical that we use just to give us an indication on whether that exhibit has blood or not. So what you do, you go into a dark room and then you spray you use that particular chemical and spray the exhibit. If it illuminates, you will know that there is a possibility that on this particular head there is blood.
Okuzokwenzeka-ke uzoyangeke kwikamera-ke elimnyama noma-ke elidark-ke yila uzospraya khona-ke leyo chemical leyo-ke uma sewukuthi-ke kunendlela-ke e-reactor ngayo-ke yila esokutshela khona-ke ukuthi kungenzeka-ke ukuthi kuleyo exhibit leyo kunegazi.
So if there is no illumination, it means we don't go any further with that particular exhibit to do the DNA on the blood part. So we won't do DNA on the blood if the preliminary analysis are negative.
Uma kuwukuthi ke uyabona ukuthi akukho okwenzekayo noma ke leyo test leyo ke i-negative angeke sibe saqhubeka ke ngolibofuzo kuhlangothi lwegazi.
So the preliminary analysis, basically it helps us to, because the DNA is expensive, we are just using it as the first test to give us a go ahead whether we should go ahead doing the DNA or not.
I-test ke nje esikhombayo ke ukuthi singaqhubeka yini ngayo noma cha.
So when, in terms of that preliminary analysis, if they are positive, like I said, then that particular exhibit where it is positive, it will be drawn, and we draw a sketch of that particular exhibit and show and indicate where the blood it's where possible blood is on that particular exhibit.
Uma kuwukuthi ke imiphumela ke ikhomba ke ukuthi positive yila esenza khona noma ke esidlowa khona ke sketch ke la esibese siyakhomba khona ukuthi ikuphi nendawo kuyona ke le exhibit la ekunegazi khona.
So the part of where then that particular, if it's negative, we don't even draw it, we'll just dispatch it back to say the exhibit is negative, and then we won't do DNA analysis in terms of blood.
Uma kuwukuthi ke imiphumela ke i-negative asingeke sibe sadrowa ke ila esizoyibuyisela khona ke sibese siyasho ke ukuthi ke imiphumela i-negative asingeke siyenze ke i-DNA mayela negazi.
So other preliminary tests that we are also doing is where you check for the hair on the exhibit. So you will then physically look for the hair on, for instance, on the head. You will physically look whether you can find the hair on that particular exhibit.
Okunye futhi ke ubheka ke inwele yila ubheka ke noma usubuka khona ukuthi uyayibona yini inwele bona ke ufakazi lobo noma kusigqoko leso.
And also, we also check for epithelial cells, which is normally they call it sweat. So if, for instance, the exhibit is unknown, so it's not taken from anyone that we know, so we'll then have to cut out the sweat. We don't have to test it, we cut it out where we believe there is sweat on that particular exhibit.
Bese kuthi ke uma asithi ke ufakazi lobo kubuya ke noma kusuka ke la mhlambe ke umuntu ke ongaziwa noma la kungaziwa ke khona ke kona ke uma usibheka lokhu kuthiwa ukujuluka kona ke kuyasikwa.
So
Yes. Now, what follows if a sample is positive?
So for the sweat, as I said, my lord, we don't test. We just either we swab, like if it's a head, we swab the area of the head inside where we know that those epithelial cells or the sweat, we swap it so that we can take that particular sample to the DNA process without testing it.
Nanjengoba ngishilo ke ukuthi uma ke kujuluka obhekwayo ke akutestwa ke kodwa ke kwenziwa lokho kubizwa ukuthi ke iswap la iqatwa la khona ke ujuluka ke kuba khona.
So you swap on the actual head where you know that on that particular exhibit, that is where the sweat, you can find the sweat from that particular person who wear that particular exhibit.
Ukuthi ke kuleyo ndawo ke le ucabangayo noma wazi ke khona ke ukuthi uma umuntu isigqoko leso esithwele ke ikuphi la engajuluka khona ke yila iswap yenziwa khona.
And normally, where would it be on a head?
The inside part of the head, where like when you wear a head, where it stays on your head. So that whole inside of the head of the head, you then swap around it so that you are able to concentrate the swap, and that particular swap you will put it into the file, and then it will go for DNA analysis straight away.
Ila khona-ke uma isigqoko usithwele la ngaphakathi-ke le ngxenye lena ehlala khona-ke la ekhanda ila iswap ezokwenziwa khona-ke bese futhi-ke emuva kwalokho-ke iyahanjiswa-ke ila ezohlolwa khona-ke ihlolela yona-ke i-DNA.
So the preliminary analysis is basically where you are testing. It's when you are doing for other exhibits will be like if you are doing for semen, you will then have another chemical where you are checking for semen if the case is a rape case as well.
Uma kuwukuthi-ke sikhuluma-ke ngalo-ke icala-ke lokudlungula-ke futhi-ke okubhekwayo-ke lana manje sekubhekwa yona-ke i-semen enye-ke i-chemical ezosetshenziswa lapho.
So when the preliminary analysis are done, the positive samples and the epithelial cell sample or the sweat samples will then be cut into smaller pieces so that they can go into the DNA analysis system.
Uma kuwukuthi-ke imiphumela-ke i-positive lawo masampuli-ke kanye futhi nawo-ke amasampuli-ke ekujuluka-ke azosikwa-ke abese-ke afakwa-ke la azothi khona-ke ayongena-ke ukuhlolwa-ke noma-ke kwi-analysis yayo-ke i-DNA.
So that is where we call it the sample, where we are submitting the sample into the DNA analysis.
Ila khona-ke amasampuli manje ase efakwa-ke noma endluliselwa-ke kuyona-ke manje-ke noma-ke i-analysis yayo-ke i-DNA.
So at this stage, my Lord, we no longer have a bag or there is just a file with smaller items inside like this one. Basically, we reduce the whole exhibit into this smaller nyana file, and the rest of the exhibit will then be dispatched back to the police station.
Lapho-ke manje asisenaso-ke isikhwama-ke manje sekusebenza-ke le file-ke la khona-ke lama exhibits asefakwa khona-ke okunye-ke kona-ke bese kundlula kubuyiselwa khona-ke e-police station.
So when the DNA process starts at extraction, so I'm moving from preliminary analysis to the DNA analysis system.
Yes.
So the DNA analysis system starts with extraction, where that particular exhibit, the DNA is extracted from it. So you are removing DNA from the exhibit.
Manje-ke bese kuba la khona-ke manje ulibofuthi noma i-DNA lena-ke manje isiyakhishwa-ke manje noma iyathathwa-ke kuyona-ke ingxenye yobufakazi noma i-exhibit.
So there are chemicals that are used in terms of extracting the DNA from that particular sample.
Khona-ke nalapho-ke ama-chemicals asetshenziswayo-ke ukwenza khona lokho.
So after the extractions has been done, so you will then go to another step which is called the PCR.
Bese sindlulela-ke manje kokunye-ke noma istep-ke esibizwa ngokuthi yi-PCR.
Can you explain what is PCR?
PCR is just, in short, is short for polymerase chain reaction. PCR is where we target specific regions of the DNA.
Manje-ke le processing noma yona-ke leyo i-PCR leyo-ke yila manje esekubheka-ke ingxenye ey'thize-ke zayo i-DNA.
So from that extract of the DNA, we are going to target specific part of the DNA that we know that those particular regions of the DNA is the one that are going to be used to identify individuals.
Lawo maphathi-ke lawo-ke manje esekubhekwe noma egxekwe kuwona-ke iwona-ke esaziyo-ke ukuthi iwona azosetshenziswa ekuthini-ke kukhonjwe noma-ke ihlanganiswe-ke leyo DNA leyo kanye nomuntu.
What do you call those specific regions of the DNA?
You will see when I'm coming to my report, they are the names of the specific regions of the DNA. They are in the report. When I go to them, then I will basically be able to show you what I meant about the specific regions of the DNA.
Mase ngena kuwona-ke umbiko wami ila ngizochaza khona-ke kabanzile ngawona-ke lawo ma-regions lawo.
So after the PCR is done, we do what we call electrophoresis, where is basically that samples goes through a gel medium, and that's where, like, the electrophoresis is basically going for separation of those particular regions.
Manje-ke bese kuthi kuhlukaniswa-ke lawo ma-regions athile-ke noma-ke la kusetshenziswa khona-ke i-gel medium ukuthi ase ayahlukaniswa-ke lawo ma-regions athile.
So after the electrophoresis, we do what we call a gene mapper. That is another process that is done.
Bese kuba nenye futhi-ke i-process eyenziwayo-ke ebibuzwa ngokuthi i-gene mapper.
And what does gene mapper entail?
The gene mapper is where you are then checking the results after the electrophoresis. Then you will have the DNA results. That is goes into a gene mapper where the gene mapper analyze the DNA results.
Ila usubheka khona-ke imiphumela-ke bese kuthi yona-ke i-gene mapper leyo ise manje ihlola-ke yona imiphumela yona-ke ye-DNA.
So when you analyze the DNA samples, you analyze them with the positive and the negative controls.
Uma-ke uwahlola-ke lawo ma-results noma leyo miphumela-ke uwahlola-ke ngayo i-negative kanye nayo-ke i-positive control.
So the samples, when they are analyzed, they go together with those particular controls, so that when the gene mapper check the quality of the results, he will then first check whether whether on the positive control is there a result, because you are expecting to get a result on the positive control.
Bese kuthi uma yona-ke i-gene mapper isibheka-ke imiphumela leyo izobheka-ke ukuthi ikhona yini-ke i-positive ekhona-ke.
So when the result shows that the positive control has the result, it means the system has worked.
Uma isitshengisa-ke ukuthi-ke kune-positive control ekhona kusho-ke ukuthi-ke inqubo-ke noma i-system isebenzile.
Because you know the results, you are expecting the results on the positive control, and if there are results, it means everything went well.
Ngoba-ke ulindeleke imiphumela-ke uma kuno-positive, manje-ke uma-ke i-positive control leyo isiphumile-ke uyazi-ke ukuthi konke-ke kuhambe ngendlela noma kahle.
However, if there are no results in the positive control, it means something went wrong, so you will have to redo the whole samples.
Kodwa-ke uma kuwukuthi kuyona i-positive control leyo akunamiphumela evelayo noma-ke etshengiswayo kusho ukuthi-ke khona-ke ungahambanga kahle kufanele konke-ke use manje usuqala phansi.
The other control that is checked at gene mapper is the negative control.
Okunye futhi-ke okubhekwayo kuyona-ke i-gene mapper i-negative control.
So a negative control is just like water. So there is no sample in it, it's just water. When the results come out, you expect not to get any result.
Kuyafana nje-ke namanzi-ke awulindeleke ukuthi uthole lutho uma nje une-negative control uyazi ukuthi ayikho imiphumela oyilindele.
So when you analyze that particular negative control, if there are no result, it means there is no contamination.
Uma-ke ukubheka-ke noma ukuhlola-ke lokho bese futhi-ke u-analyze-ke leyo negative control uthola-ke uma kungekho imiphumela-ke kusho ukuthi-ke akukho ukuphazamiseka okuye kwaba khona.
Should the negative control have results, it means at some point there was contamination.
Uma kuwukuthi leyo negative control inemiphumela enayo kusho ukuthi kukhona nje la khona-ke okukhona okwenzakele.
So when the negative control have results, it means the whole samples that were run with those particular controls, they will then fail.
kusho ukuthi ke uma kunemiphumela lawo amasample onke lawo enziwe naleyo negative control kusho ukuthi ke onke ke afail.
So that is where the gene mapper does. He does the quality checks on the results, and then those results will then be loaded into the system or the database where I can come in and be able to use those results because they have been verified to be correct results.
Ila i-gene mapper ingena khona noma ekwenzayo ke khona lapho ke ukuthi nje yenzeke isiqiniseko semiphumela leyo ke bese ukuthi yila mina ke engena khona ke ngiyona ke lokho okusho ukuthi ke imiphumela leyo ke esikhona ke isiqinisekiso sokuthi ke yebo leyo miphumela leyo ibhekiwe ke kwase kwenza isiqinisekiso ngayo.
If you say the results are loaded on a system, which system are you referring to?
So the results will be loaded on the DNA database where if everything passed, then those results will go and then will be accessible to me and everyone to be able to use to do the DNA comparison.
Ila bese kuzondlulisela khona ke kwisystem ke yona ke ye-DNA ekuzokuthi ke mina ke engizokwazi ukuthi ngiyibone kanye nomunye ke ekuzokwazi ukuthi manje ke senzeke uku-analyze noma ke ukuhlolwa kwayo ke i-DNA leyo.
And what does the DNA comparison entail?
So the DNA comparison, my lord, is when you have a docket like this one where you take out the results of the specific samples in your case, and then you take for the samples from the scene and also sample from the reference from the suspect, which is called reference samples.
Lana ke uthatha ke manje ke amasample ke la asuka kwisini nalana ke asithi mhlambe ke awakhe ke umsola uma sekuwukuthi ke kunemiphumela ke manje etholakele noma ekhona la uzophathanisa khona.
So you take those two samples and then you do what we call a match, whether they match or they are not matching.
Ila usuqhathanisa uboneke khona ukuthi kuyahlangana noma kuhlangana.
So they can either match or be a non-match, which is an exclusion.
Kungenzeka ukuthi kuyahlangana noma ke cha akukho nje ukuhlangana okukhona.
Yes.
So in terms of the results, my lord, the results that you can get after or when the DNA is done, you can either get a single donor DNA profile.
Uma kuya ke ngokwemiphumela ke etholakalayo uyakwazi ke ukuthola ke okubizwa ngokuthi ke i-single donor profile.
So, like for instance, the reference sample, you are going to get a DNA that is from one individual, that is a single donor DNA profile.
Ila khona ke ozothola ke masithi ke kwisample leyo etholakeleke ukuthi ke isample leyo kusho nje ukuthi ke ibuya kumuntu oyedwa.
You can also get a DNA that is called a mixture DNA profile.
Kube nala ukhona uthola khona ke okuhlanganeke noma ukuthi ke lana ke kuhlangeneke noma iprofile leyo ihlangene.
So a mixture DNA profile, my lord, is a DNA that is donated by more than one person.
Lokho ke kukutshela ukuthi ke leyo profile leyo ke akusiyona ke yomuntu oyedwa kodwa ke umuntu nje ungathi ke ungaphezulu koyedwa.
So those are the results that you can get when the samples are analyzed.
Ileyo ke imiphumela ongayithola uma ke sekusetshenzwa ngayo ke ama sample lawo ebhekwa.
Now, what do you do after those results? After the results have been obtained?
So what I do is I do what we call DNA comparison.
Bese ngenza lokho ukuthi ke ukuqhathaniswa kwalo ke ulibofuzo.
So as I said, my lord, is where I do whether check for a match or a non-match.
ila engibheka khona-ke ukuthi kuyahlangana noma akuhlangani yini.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yes, and how do you reflect those results? Well, where do you reflect them?
So, in terms of, I will then compile a DNA report to then tabulate the results and showing you the results as from those particular exhibits from the scene and the exhibit from the reference samples.
Ila khona-ke engizokwenza-ke manje lo mbiko-ke la engizokutshengisa khona-ke mayelana nemiphumela-ke noma ama-results lawo abuya kulawo ma-sample.
Thank you. Now, thank you for that background. Can I then ask you to turn to Exhibit X11? Just identify that exhibit.
Yes, this is a letter, we call it SAP 21, that was written by myself.
Lena-ke incwadi-ke noma iletha esiyibiza-ke ngokusemaphoyiseni ukuthi i-SAP 21 eyabhalwa yimina.
The date?
The date is 2019-04-04.
Ngeyi-4 zika-April 2019.
Yes.
So basically, this, my lord, is just an overall. I was just doing we were doing when I was doing the investigation, I then compiled what I got from all those particular exhibits.
Lana-ke sengenza-ke uphenyo lwami la ngifake khona-ke konke lokhu engakuthola-ke kulawo ma-exhibits ahlukene.
Yes, in respect of which matter?
In respect of Phosphorus case 636 of 10/2014.
Kuhlangeneke noma nokumayela-ke necala-ke eliwu-phosphorus case 636 10/2014.
Yes, and what is the lab number?
The lab number is 217731/14, and as well that lab number is for exhibits from the scene.
Kunale lab number-ke leyona-ke le lab number lab number yalama exhibits abuya-ke kwi-scene eku-217731/14.
And we also have the lab number specifically for the reference samples, which is 126225/16.
Bese kuthi-ke sibe nale lab number-ke yona-ke ebuya yona-ke eyama samples eku-126225/16.
Yes, you can proceed by reading the exhibit's description and the results.
So, my lord, in this instance, is just to give you an overview as to the exhibits and the results that I got from those particular exhibits.
Lana-ke ukuchazela noma ukufundela-ke ama-exhibits engawathola kanye nemiphumela-ke yawo lawo ma-exhibits lawo.
So, in the first one is the R and L is the right and left hand swaps. There were two swaps. One is the right hand swap and the other one is a left hand swap. And those swaps were taken from the deceased, and the DNA that I got from there, it matches the reference sample of the deceased.
Lana-ke kuno-right, kuno-R, kuno-L, bese kuthi-ke hand swaps, kusho ukuthi-ke isandla sakho sokudla kanye nesokunxele-ke, kanye futhi-ke nokuthi kwakuwamasampuli kabani-ke, awakhe-ke umufi, ase futhi-ke ukuthi-ke ahlangana-ke, noma imiphumela ethi-ke yebo impela-ke awakhe umufi.
There, against the results, you mentioned it was FP, matched the deceased. Can you just explain what is FP?
FP, I meant that is the full profile result, which means it's a single donor DNA profile.
Lana ke u-FP uchaza ke ukuthi i-profile ephelele noma ke i-full profile futhi ke i-single donor profile ukuthi ke kubuya kumuntu oyedwa.
Yes. Next exhibit.
The next exhibit is the door handle swab. On that swab is a touch DNA. So on that particular swab. So that particular door handle swab, what I look at is the epithelial or the touch DNA, and then that touch DNA included G. Kumalo.
Lana ke sikhuluma ke ngehandle ke yesicabha noma yawo ke umnyango lana ke ukuthi ke ila ubamba khona ke ngibheka ke ukujuluka ke noma ke lokho kubiza ukuthi ke i-touch DNA iyona ke eyayifaka phakathi ke uG Khumalo.
Is there an indication of as to from which door handle in the house was that swab taken?
The indication I can check for that, but it's room 1.
Ukuthi ke isiphi ke isicabha phakathi ke endlini ngabheka lokho kodwa ke uma kuchaza noma kwakubhalwe uroom 1.
Yes, you may proceed.
And then the other swab as well is the second swab, also from the door handle.
Yes, of which room?
The door handle. Also there is touch DNA, and then that touch DNA as well included Miss G. Kumalo as well.
Bese ukuthi futhi ke nakwesinye ke noma ke kwenye ke ihandle yesicabha khona ke endlini nayo ke ila ekubanjwa khona ke noma lokho kubizwa ukuthi i-touch DNA nayo ke eyafaka uG Khumalo.
Is the door handle of which room?
I can verify as well this one, which room is it, but yeah, let me, I can always check which room it is.
Thank you.
Ukuthi ke iliphi ke ikamera ke ngabheka ke lokho.
Yes.
And then I have a blood swab. That blood swab was taken from next to the TV stand.
Bese ukuthi ke kuba ke neswabhu ke noma ke igazi ke lona ke elatholakala ke eduze nestand se-TV.
Its swab number?
That is swab number 3.
Uswab 3 lowo.
Yes.
So that blood that was taken from the TV stand included the deceased.
Lelo gazi lelo ke elatholakala ke eduze ne-TV stand lalifaka phakathi ke umufi.
And the fourth swab as well, it was also taken next to the TV stand.
Kanye neswabhu ke swab 4 nayo ke yegazi nayo ke eyatholakala eduze ne-TV stand.
So that particular swab as well included, that blood included the deceased.
Lelo gazi lelo ke ahlanganisa ke umufi.
And then we have the blood swab on the kitchen wall. Yeah, number 5 is the blood swab on the kitchen wall tile.
Bese kuthi ke u-blood swab 5 yena ke watholakala ke bonda ke lase kitchen.
So on that particular swab, we didn't get enough DNA.
Kuyona ke leyo ke iswab leyo ke akuzange kutholakala ulibofuzo noma i-DNA eyanele.
So when we say not enough DNA, it means there wasn't DNA enough to give us a DNA profile. So it's basically negative in terms of saying you can't use it because that profile is so little that you can't use it to compare it with anything else.
Leyo profile okusho ukuthi ke lo profile yayincane ukuthi ke ungayiqhathanisa ukhona nje ongayithi uyisebenzise noma uyiqhathanise nabo.
And then we also have blood swab number 6, and as well is from the kitchen wall as well. So that particular blood included the deceased.
Bese kuthi futhi ke u-blood swab 6 ke nayo ke owatholakala ekitchen ahlanganisa ke noma ke ufaka umufi.
And as we continue, we go to the swap 7. Swap 7 is the swap that was taken from the toilet handle. That is the toilet handle swap.
Bese kuthi siya-ke kuyena-ke uswap 7 yena-ke i-handle-ke yasetoilet.
So I got a female DNA, but it didn't include any of the females that I had in as reference samples.
Leyo-ke yona-ke imiphumela-ke yase-ke ikhomba-ke kumuntu wesifazane-ke kodwa-ke ingakhombi-ke kulaba engangenabo noma engangenama-sample abo besifazane.
And then swap 8 is also a toilet handle swap. And then also that particular swap is a female DNA and it included G. Khumalo.
Bese kuthi-ke uswap 8 naye-ke iswap-ke eyasetoilet-ke yona-ke atholakala ulibofusi noma i-DNA yomuntu wesifazane eyafaka-ke uG. Khumalo.
And then the swap 10 is the swap that was taken.
Swap 9. So
Swap 9 is the swap that was taken from the bedroom 3. On that swap 9, not enough DNA was obtained.
Bese kuthi-ke kuba no-swap 9 yena-ke wathathwa-ke ku-bedroom noma-ke ikamera lesithathu noma-ke u-bedroom 3 lapho-ke imiphumela ithi-ke kwakungena DNA eyanele.
So that particular, it means it's negative because we can't use it, that particular, there is not enough DNA to give us a DNA profile.
Kusho-ke ukuthi-ke u-negative akuna DNA eyanele ukuthi-ke isingasinikeza-ke i-profile yayo i-DNA noma ingasinikeza lokho esingasebenza ngakho.
And then the other swap, which is swap 10, that was taken from bedroom 3, also gave us not enough DNA.
Bese kuthi-ke uswap 10 naye-ke owathathwa-ke ku-bedroom 3 naye-ke akasinikezanga i-DNA eyanele.
And then we also have swap 11 that was taken from the Smirnoff can.
Sibese siba nayo-ke uswap 11 yena-ke owathathwa-ke kwikani le-Smirnoff.
And then that particular profile, it's a single donor profile and it matches Z. Khumalo.
Nalapho-ke kube-ke i-single donor profile okushoyo ukuthi-ke iqhamuka kumuntu oyedwa bese kuthi-ke i-match noma-ke iphuma-ke imiphumela ethi-ke ihlanganisa-ke uZ. Khumalo.
And then we also have swap 12 from Heineken, and then that particular swap included the deceased.
Bese siba-ke naye-ke uswap 12 i-Heineken yona-ke ihlanganisa-ke umufi.
So those particular swap from the bottles is the ones that you swap where the person drinks. Is then that you will know who was handling that particular exhibit.
Lana-ke ila ephuzwa khona-ke noma ila maswap lana-ke ebesetshenziswa-ke ukuthi-ke uswapa la noma-ke usebenza la khona-ke umuntu aphuza khona ikona-ke ekuzokutshela ukuthi ubani-ke ebephethe noma lokho noma esebenzisa khona.
And then there is a Scotch hat.
Bese kuba-ke nesigqoko noma lokho kubizwa ngokuthi-ke i-Scotch hat.
And then on that particular Scotch hat that was found on the scene, that particular Scotch hat exclude the suspect.
Bese kuthi-ke kuleso Scotch hat noma leso sigqoko leso-ke esatholakala kuyona-ke indawo yesigameko siyabakhipha-ke noma siyabakhipha asibahlanganisi abasolwa.
And then,
did you compile a report in respect of this Scotch hat?
yes,
The results on the Scotch hat.
yes, I did, madam.
Khona-ke umbiko ongiwenzile-ke mayela-ke naso leso sigqoko leso.
Yes, we'll get back to that later. Yes, you can proceed.
And another exhibit was the jacket that was taken from Mbata.
Bese kuba-ke futhi ne-jacket eyatholakala noma eyathathwa kuMbatha.
And then that DNA on the jacket included Mbata as well.
Leyo DNA leyo-ke eyatholakala kuyona-ke i-jacket iyamhlanganisa-ke naye uMbatha.
And then you also have a jacket, that there was a hair that was lifted from the jacket. That is the hair, and then on the hair, we didn't get any DNA, so there was no DNA.
Kwakunenwele ke ezatholakala kuyona ke ijacket leyo, kodwa ke kuzona ke inwele lezo ke akukho iDNA eyatholakala.
There were also crutches. On the crutches, there was not enough DNA.
Kukhona ke nama-clutch ke induku lezi ke uma ke umuntu elimele kwakungena DNA eyanele.
So on those crutches, there was no DNA on them. So underneath is just the names of the individuals or suspect and the results as I had at the time.
Lana ke ngenzansi ke amagama ke noma ke abasolwa ke kanye futhi ke nemiphumela ke engibene ngaba nayo ke ngaleso sikhathi leso.
So the first is Twala Mthokozisi, and then he's excluded on all the samples.
Ukuqala ke uthwala umthokozisi akahlanganike noma ke akekho ke kuwo onke ama samples.
We also have Kelly Kumalo is also excluded on all the samples.
Bese kuthi kwesibili ke kuba uKelly Khumalo akekho ke kuwona onke ke ama sample.
And then we also have Umadlala Tumelo also is excluded on all the samples.
Bese kulandela ke uMadlala uTumelo naye ke akekho ke kuwona onke ama sample.
And then we have Longwe Twala also is excluded on all the samples.
Bese kuba ke uyena ke uLongwe uthwala naye ke kuwona onke ke ama samples akekho noma ke akahlanganiswa ama sample onke.
We have Zandile Khumalo. Zandile Khumalo, as I said, is included on the Smirnoff can.
Bese kuba ke noZandile Khumalo nanjengoba bese ngishilo ke ngaphambilini ukuthi ke watholakala ke kwiSmirnoff noma ke kwikani leSmirnoff.
The swap number?
Smirnoff can is swap number 11.
Swap 11 lawo ke ikani leSmirnoff kula bese ngafundile ngaphambilini.
Yes.
And then we also have Gladness Khumalo, who is included on the swap from the toilet handle.
Bese siba naye ke uGladness Khumalo yona ke yena ke kutholakele ke kwihandle ke yase toilet.
And the swap number?
We have swap number 1 and number 1 and 2.
Lo ke uswap number 1 kanye no 2.
We also have the deceased.
Now, if you can look at paragraph 8 of your the report that you've just put on record, on paragraph 8, which swap number is that?
On paragraph 8.
Yeah, number 8. Under exhibit's description.
Yes.
Yes, what is the swap number?
That is swap number 8.
Yes. Now, if you go to what you've just placed on record under Gladness Khumalo, what is the correct swap number there?
Under Gladness Khumalo, this should include as well swap number 1 and 2, and also swap number 8 as well.
Lana ke kutholakala khona ke ukuthi uGladness ke yatholakala ke iswap yakhe ke etoilet handle yesicabha sase toilet ke kufanele ukuthi ihlanganise ke u1 kanye no2 kanye naye ke uswap 8.
Yes.
And then the deceased is included on the swap 12, mouth of a Heineken can.
Bese kuthi ke base siya ke na ke umufi ke kutholakala ke ukuthi ke kuswap 12 that is ukusho ukuthi ke umlomo ke wa lo ikani le Heineken.
And also included on the left and on the right and left hand swap.
bese tholakala futhi ke nabesandla sakwesokudla nabesokunxele kuwona ke lawo maswap lawo,
as well as the blood swap 3 and 4, which is floor next to the TV stand,
bese kuthi ke igazi ke uswap 3 kanye no 4 phansi eduze nestand se-TV,
also on swap 6 kitchen tile wall.
kanye ke naye ke uswap 6 okuthayela ke noma ke obondeni ke ekitchen.
Yes, what follows under 8 up to 50 is not really important. Can you just go to number 22?
Number 22 is the suspect name is Mapisa Mtokozeni.
Lana ke number 22 kama ke lomsolo wakhe Mapisa Mthokozeni.
Mapisa Mtokozeni is excluded on all the samples.
Bese kuthi ke uMapisa Mthokozeni ke akakho ke noma ke akatholakala kahlangani ke nawo onke ke amaswap.
And then we also have number 23. 23 is Ntuli Fizokuhle.
Bese kuthi ke kuba number 23 uNtuli Fisokuhle.
And then is also excluded on all the samples.
Nakuthi ke akahlangani ke noma ke akekho ke kuwona onke ama samples.
And 37?
37 is MS Sibia, as well is excluded in all the samples.
Bese kuthi ke u37 uMS Sibiya naye ke akekho ke kuwona onke ama samples.
Yes, you can then go to the table as appears on exhibit X12. It's on page 2 of exhibit X12. Yes, you can proceed.
My Lord, on this particular table is the table where the results, relevant results from the exhibits from the scene and the reference samples are then compared.
Ilana ke sekuqhathaniswa khona ke imiphumela ke kuwona ke ama samples ayo ke iscene kanye ke sekwenziwa manje ke ukuqhathanisa khona la.
So on this table, my Lord, you will see the first column is written samples.
Uzobona ke lana ke kukhulunywa uqala ke kubhalwe ama sample.
So, like I said, the samples are those exhibits either from the scene or the reference samples.
Bese ngishilo ke ngaphambilini ukuthi ukukhulunywa ngala atholakale ke kwindawo yesigameko noma ke lawo ke asithi mhlambe ke atholwe kumuntu noma kubantu abathize.
So, the first sample is written sample and then with an indication of 1, that is swap 1, and then it has the container number, which is 14DCAH 8988, and it was contained in a bag, which is PA 400215017.
Lana ke kubhaliwe ke ngaphansi kwakhe ke usample base kubhalwa ke uswap base kubhalwa u1 ukuthi ke lo swap 1 leyo ke wayeke ku container ewu14 DCAH 8988. Leyo container leyo eyayingaphakathi ke kwesikhwama ke sokufakazi esine number ewu-PA 40215017.
And where was this swap taken?
The swap is the swap 1, which was taken from the door handle.
Leyo swap ke ilena ke ewu-swap 1 kule eqeda ufundwa manje ke ekuyi-handle ke yaso isiqaba.
Yes, of which bedroom?
That is bedroom 1.
Kuyena ke u-bedroom 1.
And the next exhibit is a head, which is exhibit B. And on that head, the DNA that is analyzed is presumable high friction area. In simple, it's just the sweat.
Bese kuthi ke elandelayo ke bese kubhalwe lapha ke uhead B isiqhoko ke ila ekuthi la khona ke okwakubhekwa ke lapho ukujuluka.
So that particular head was contained in a bag. That bag has a serial number or reference number PA 30007885535.
Bese kuthi leso siqhoko ke sasingaphakathi ke kwesikhwama ke sobufakazi esinenamba ewu-PA 3007885535.
So underneath, we will then go to the reference samples.
Na enzansi ke bese siya manje ke kuma sample ke noma ke lawo athathwe kubantu.
So the first reference sample is for the one for MZ Mapisa, and then the container number is 19DBAF 0198, and the bag number is PA 400463862.
Leyo sample leyo ke iyathathwa ke ku MZ Mapisa eyayi ngaphakathi ke kwi container ewu19 DBAF 0198. Leyo container ingaphakathi ke kwesikhwama ke sobufakazi esinenamba ewu-PA 4004638062.
And the next reference sample is from Mapisa Mtoko Ziseni, and then that container is 13 DBAD 5906, and the bag number is PA 50021761171.
Landelayo ke isampule eyathathwa ke kwakuyakhe ke uMaphisa Mthokoziseni eyayikwi container nenamba ewu13 DBAD 5906. Leyo container leyo ke ingaphakathi ke kwisikhwama sezobufakazi esinenamba ewu-PA 5002176171.
And the next is the reference sample of BS Ntanzi. That particular reference sample is contained in a container is 19 DBAN 1076, and the bag number is PA 400471837.
Bese kuthi landelayo ke isample kwakuyakhe ke uBS Ntanzi eyayikwi container enenamba ewu19 DBAN 1076. Yona ke leyo container engaphakathi ke kwisikhwama sezobufakazi esinenamba ewu-PA 4004718737.
And the next reference sample is M Nube, and then the container is 20 DBAS 6469, and the bag number is PA 400493624.
Bese kuthi landelayo ke isample kwakuyakhe ke uM Ncube eyayikwi container inamba yaleyo container ewu20 DBAS 6469 ekuyisikhwama ke esinenamba ewu-PA 4004936249.
So, my lord, the samples continue to the next page, and then we have the reference sample of Ntuli Fizokutle, and then his container was 13 DBAD 7184, and the bag number is PA 50021775590.
Bese kuthi landelayo ke isample kwakuyakhe uNtuli Fisokuhle ekwi container enenamba ewu13 DBAD 7184 ekwi bag ke ewu-PA 5002177590.
And then the last reference sample is from Sibia MS, and the container is 17 DBBG 2598, and the bag number is PA 4003827
Bese kuthi ke elandelayo ke isample kwabo yakhe ke uSibiya MS ne container number ewu17 DBBG 2598 kanye ke kanti ke I number ke yesikhwama sokufakazi uPA 4003 827407.
So in terms of samples, we have 2 samples from the scene and there are 5 reference samples.
Mayelana nawo ke amasample lana ke sinama sample amabili abayebuya ke wona ke kwindawo ke yesigameko kanye nama sample awu5 bona ke wona ke athola nama athathwa ebantwini.
So on the samples, when you go to the next column, you see the next column is written gender marker or amelogenin, which tells us the donor of that particular sample, whether that particular sample, if the donor is a male, it will be XY, and if it's a female, it will be XX.
Lana ke bese kuba nala khona ekubhalwe khona ke igender marker okushoyo ke noma okusichazelayo ke ukuthi ke umuphi lo muntu lona ke isample lena ethathwe kuyena ke uma kuumuntu wesilisa uzobhalwa ke uXY uma kuumuntu wesifazane bese kubhalwa ke uXX.
So on the swab, if you look at the swab, you will see the swab has an XY.
Uma ubheka ke kuyona ke iswap uzoyibona ke iswap leyo ukuthi kubhalwe ke XY.
However, what is important is to understand that on the swab, the DNA that was obtained is a mixture DNA profile.
Kodwa ke okubalekile ukuthi ke okutholakala noma okwatholakala ke kuyona ke iswap leyo ke kwakuyi profile ke eyayihlangahlangene noma ke eyayi mixture.
As well as on the head, it's XY, and the DNA as well there, it's a mixture DNA profile.
Kanye naso ke isigqoko ke uXY kodwa ke uma iprofile yakhona ke akusukuthi ke iprofile ekhomba ke umuntu othize kodwa ke kuyi mixture noma ke kuhlangene.
Can you just explain if you say it's a mixture in the context of gender marker, or what do you mean?
So in the context of a gender marker, if you have XY, it means that particular mixture, it can be a mixture between a male and a male individual.
Lana ke uma ubheka ke ngikhuluma ngokuthi ke ihlangene ke iprofile yana ke uma ikunikeza ke uXY ungasho ke ukuthi ke ukuhlangana ke kuphakathi komuntu wesilisa kanye futhi nomunye futhi umuntu wesilisa.
Or in simple terms, it can be a mixture of more than one male individual.
Ma ukwenza nje kalula ke ukuthi ke ngenzeka ke ukuthi nje akusiyena nje umuntu wesilisa oyedwa.
So, and as well, if you still have that XY, it can be a mixture of a male and a female individuals.
Noma futhi ke usenaye ke leyo XY loyo kodwa kungenzeka ke ukuthi ke imixture yakhe ke umuntu wesilisa kanye nomuntu wesimame.
So, when you look at the XY on a mixture DNA,
Uma ubheka yena ke uXY la khona ke iDNA yakhona ke ihlangene noma mixture.
you must always remember that that XY, it doesn't mean that mixture is a only male individual mixture.
Lokho ke kungakuse ukuthi kuwena ke ngoba ke ku XY ukuthi leyo mixture etholakalayo lapho ke ukuthi ke umuntu wesilisa kuphela.
So in a mixture, so that X can represent an XX, which is a female,
Kuloya X kuloya XY uX lo seqaleni ke use engaba inkomba ke ka XX okuwumuntu wesifazane,
or the XY that is from the male individual.
noma ke uXY obuya ke kumuntu wesilisa.
My Lord, as I said, on that particular swab, that was from the door, that was from the swab from the door handle. So that swab, I even mentioned that G. Kumalo was included in that particular swap.
Nanjengoba bese ngishilo ke uma ubheka ke kuleya swap leya na ke ihandle yesicabha bese ngishilo ngaphambilini ke ukuthi ke naye ke uG Khumalo watholakala ke lapha yana ukuthi ke wabamba ke lapha kule sasivalo lesiya noma kule sasicabha.
But there you can see that we have XY, but also her DNA can also be found in that particular swap that was taken from the door handle.
Nanoma sinaye ke uXY lapha yana kodwa naye ke eyakhe iDNA yatholakala kusona lesa sicabha lesiya.
So the XY, like I said, can represent both a mixture that will have a male and males, or a mixture of males and females.
Nanjengoba bese ngishilo ke ukuthi uXY loyana kusengaba ke inhlanganisela noma imixture ke yayo ke umuntu wesilisa nomuntu wesilisa noma umuntu wesilisa nomuntu wesifazane.
But when we talk about, where I was speaking about gender amylogenin, where I'm talking about if it's a male, it's XY, if it's a female, it's XX, is when I talk about the single donor profiles.
Na la ngikhuluma khona ke ngithi ke uXY umuntu wesilisa, XX umuntu wesifazane, ila engikhuluma khona ke ngama profiles noma ke ngeprofile yomuntu oyedwa.
So if they take a sample from a female, any female, the results will come as XX.
Uma kuwukuthi bathatha ke amasampulu ke kumuntu wesifazane noma kuwumuntu umuphi umuntu wesifazane uma ke imiphumela ebuya izobuya ithi XX.
And when it's a male individual, then that particular sample will then be XY.
Uma kuwumuntu wesilisa leyo sample leyo ke izothi XY.
So if you look at all the reference samples from Mapisa to Sibia, all of them, they are XY because those reference samples were taken from male individuals.
Uma ubuka ke ukusuka kuyena ke uMaphisa ukuyofika kuyena ke uSibiya uzobona ke ukuthi uXY ngoba ke onke lawo masample lawo athathwa ke kubantu besilisa.
The last thing I want to address in terms of the mixtures is that if you get a mixture and the amylogenin or the gender marker is XX, but it's a mixture, it means only females can be read in that mixture.
Kodwa ke ngisakhuluma ngako ke uXX kanye noXY la uthola khona ke ukuthi kuyinhlanganisela noma kuyi mixture kodwa ke kuXX kusho ukuthi ke kuleyo mixture noma kuleyo kuhlangana lokho ke abantu besifazane kuphela.
So if a mixture has XY, it means you can read, it's possible to read males in that mixture and females in that mixture.
Kodwa ke uma ke imixture yakho ke kuXY kungenzeka ukuthi uma usurida noma usufunda ke lapho ukuthi ungahlanganisa ke umuntu wesilisa kanye futhi nomuntu wesifazane.
So if you have a mixture with XX, it means only females can be read in that mixture.
Kodwa ke uma kuwukuthi mixture yakho ke uXX ukuthi nje abantu ke lapho ke ungabahlanganisa ke lapho abantu besifazane kuphela.
So my lord, I'm going to go to the bigger column. The bigger column is written STR loci.
Ngizoya ke manje kule column enkulu ke yona ke ebhalwe uSTR loci.
So these are the STR loci are the regions of the DNA that we look at in the forensics, that we know that when we look at these particular regions, we'll be able to identify individuals.
Lana ke indawo ke noma ama regions athile ke la esibheka kuona ke ukuthi uma sibheka kuona ke ila esingakwazi ukuthi khona ke sithole noma sikhombe khona ke abantu.
So these are the targeted regions that I was talking about, where when you are doing PCR, you are targeting specific regions of the DNA. Those are the regions of the DNA that we look at that we know that we will be able to identify individuals.
Ikona ke la ebengkhuluma ngawo ke ngaphambilini ke mangikhuluma ngayo ke iPCR ngithi uma kubhekwa ke kwindawo ezithize ke ila khona ke waziyo khona ke ukuthi kukhona ke ozokuthola khona.
So underneath that you will see there is start with the names of the regions start with D8S1179
Okay.
and then they end up with FGA.
Uma ke ubheka ke aqala ke kwisandla sakho sokunxeleka uqala ke ngo DAS 1179 bese egcineni ke ikholam yokugcina ke iphela ngo FGA.
So those are the names of the DNA regions that we look at the forensics, that we know that when we target these specific DNA regions, we'll be able to use them to identify individuals.
Ilama regions ke bengikhuluma ngawo ukuthi uma sibheka kuwona ke noma ke iwona ke esiwatargetayo ukuthi uma sibheka kuwona ke ila esokwazi ukuthi sikhombe khona ke noma sihlanganise khona ke sithole khona abantu.
So the DNA from all those particular regions, that DNA, when you look at the DNA that is obtained from all those DNA regions, they will then give you a DNA profile of an individual.
Uma ubheka ke kuzona zonke lezo ndawo noma lawo ma regions onke ke lawo eDNA ila khona wona ke azokwazi ukuthi abe inkomba noma akukhombeke kwiprofile yomuntu.
So if you look at any reference sample, for instance, because it's a known sample, the DNA from all those DNA regions, that is obtained from all those DNA regions, will then give us the unique DNA profile of that particular person.
Uma ubheka ke lawo ma profile lawo ku region yonke ke futhi uyofika ke egcineni ila ezokunika khona ke I profile ekuyiyona ke ephelele yomuntu.
So you will see underneath the DNA regions, you will see their numbers.
Ngaphansi ke kwawo lawo ma regions uzobona ke ama number awo.
The numbers represent the characters that an individual has inherited from both parents.
Inamba leyo ke ikunikeza ke noma ichazela ke lokho ke nawo noma lawo ma character ke umuntu lowo awatholile kumzali ngamunye kulabo kubazali ababili umuntu anabo.
So all individuals have their own unique numbers that represent the characters that they have obtained from their parents.
Umuntu ngamunye ke unenamba ke yakhe ke echazayo ke ama characters ke umuntu awatholile ke kumzali ngayedwa.
So I'm just going to illustrate using a known sample. In this instance, I will use the last sample on the page 2 of 5, that is M. Ngube.
Lana ke engizoyisebenzisa ke ilena ke ebhalwe egcineni ke isample ebhalwe ke uMncube lana ke kulo page 2 of 5.
You will see, even in all the rest, you will see that there are two numbers.
Uzobona ke ukuthi kunama number amabili.
So underneath each and every DNA region, there are two numbers.
Ngaphansi ke kwe region ngayodwa ke kulamahla uzobona ke ukuthi ke kunama number amabili.
So when we look at M. Ngube, you will see on D8S1179, you will see we have 12 and 14.
Uma ubheka kuyena ke la bhalwe khona ke Mncube bese kuba nale yakhola ke eD8 S1179 inamba ke ekhona ke lapha yana enzansi eduze kwakhe uMncube u12 14.
So those 12 and 14 represent the characters that he obtained from both parents.
Lo ya 12 nalo ya 14 uchaza ke ama characters ke noma lokho ke akutholile ke kuba kumzali ngamunye kulabazali ababili umuntu anabo.
So 12 can either come from the mother or father, or 14 coming from the mother or father.
U12 ke ngenzeka ukuthi usuka uqhamuka kuma noma kubaba noma u14 uqhamuka kuma noma kubaba.
So for us to know is when for instance, we are doing paternity, we'll be able to show you, when we have his father and mother, we'll be able to show you these 12 come from the mother and these 14 come from the father or vice versa.
Kodwa ke uma sekwenzeka ke manje sekubhekwa ke ukuthi lana ke sinabazali bobabili ke kuyabhekwa ke manje ukuthi ke impela ke umntwana wabo yini ila esokwazi ukuthi manje sikhombe khona ukuthi u12 lona ke ngaphandle ke ngabazake ubuya kuyena uma u14 ubuya kuyena ubaba.
So you will see, as I said, the parents, each parent will give half of the DNA, which will then represented by these numbers, and then which are 2, which means half from one and the other half from the other.
Lama number ke lawo ke la 12 14 ke ila asichazelayo ke ukuthi ingxenye ibuya kuma ingxenye ibuya kubaba.
So if you look even on the other reference samples, you will see that they have 2 numbers as well.
Noma ubheka ke kwamanye ke ama sample uzobona ukuthi nawo ke anama number amabili.
So I'm going to go to the swap 1 on page 2 of 5. The first sample, you will see, as I said, it's a mixture. You will see on D8S1179, you will see we have 12, 13, and 14. 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Uma sibheka phezulu ke ku swap 1 ngishilo ke ukuthi ke lapha yana ke ukuthi ke imixture le noma ke kuhlangeneke lapha yana ke manje ke ama number esinawo lapha yana ke u12 u13 u14 kanye no15.
So those indicates that characters come from more than one person.
Lokhuyana ke kuyinkomba ke noma ke kuyatshela ke ukuthi lokhuyana ke okutholakala lapha yana akubuyi kumuntu oyedwa.
So it's possible, there are possible combinations that you can get there in terms of the DNA that you can get from that particular region.
Make kuleya region leyana kuyasho ke ukuthi ke lapha yana ke ngenzeka ke ukuthi ke kunama combinations ke awungawathola noma ama combinations ahlukene atholakalayo kuleya ndawo noma kuleya region.
So in a mixture, what is important is for us, when we do DNA comparison, is to check whether the reference sample of an individual can be read in that particular mixture.
Okubalulekile noma okusemqoka ke la kutholakala khona ke ukuthi ke lana ke kuhlangeneke noma ke awutholi umuntu oyedwa ukuthi isample noma ke ireference sample ke yomuntu ke noma ke oyitholileke iyatholakala yini kuleya mixture leya.
So you are basically looking at the characters of the reference sample compared to those characters in the mixture to check whether that particular person of the reference sample is he part of that mixture or not.
Manje ke uzobheka ke ukuthi kunalama characters atholakalayo ke kwisample ke asithi ke isample etholakala kumuntu othize ube usiyoqhathanisa ke nalokhuyana okuthola lapha yana ke kuleya mixture ukuthi ke le sample lena yalomuntu onayo iyatholakala yini kuleya mixture onayo.
So what is important for us to say a person is included in a mixture, he has to be included in all the DNA regions.
Ukuthi ke sitholeke ukuthi umuntu loyo uyatholakala ukhona kuleya mixture ufanele ukuthi ke kuma DNA regions abe ukhona noma ke atholakale kuona onke.
So his characters in specific DNA regions must be there in the mixture for us to say that person is included.
Ukuthi ke sisho ke ukuthi loya muntu loyana naye ke uyahlanganiswa lapha yana ke ama characters akhe kwi region ngayodwa kulama regions ahlukeneke ukuthi ke uyatholakala.
So I'm gonna do the just to illustrate as well, looking at the results. I'm gonna start with the reference sample of MZ Mapisa.
Ngizoqala ke ngayo ke I reference sample yakhe ke uMZ Mapisa.
So if you look at on D8S1179, Mapisa has 13 and 13.
Uma ufunda ke lapha kuyena uMaphisa ubese ubheka ke ngenzansi kwakhe uD8S 1179 uzothola ke inamba elapha yana ke u1313 kuyena uMZ Maphisa.
Sorry, Captain, if I may just interrupt you, my lord, to see the court time has almost expired. Will this be an
What time is it
appropriate
now?
time? It's 15:32, my lord.
13:32.
Yes.
Are you still going to be long, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you available tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll adjourn your evidence to tomorrow. Which other witness are you calling tomorrow, Mr.?
Well, we've lined up a witness. We just want to make a final decision tomorrow, my lord, as to whether we'll be calling.
No,
that
but I want to find out, is there a witness you've lined out?
Yes, yes.
Not speculation. Yeah, see you tomorrow.
7 o'clock.